Cliché withers away. LeGuin does not resort to evil masterminds. No. We're going to review today The Left Hand of Darkness, a science fiction masterpiece. Welcome to Billy's Books. Today we're going to review The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. LeGuin, a science fiction master. This piece is The Left Hand of Darkness is a masterpiece known from the late 60s, I think. It's so far ahead of its time. What they say in the introduction, I mentioned that she doesn't just do spaceships and evil masterminds and stuff like that. She actually, most of her writing describes alternate societies. The spaceships are secondary, and the science is actually secondary. She mostly focuses on alternate societies, though it's definitely in a science fiction world. So in the science fiction world that she has created over several books, humans can travel around the galaxy, and they travel at near light speed, so they travel, and then when they get to wherever they are, the people they left behind are dead. Meanwhile, at the same time, they have what's called an ansible, which can do immediate communication between planets without that thing. So anyway, so this story is a guy from Earth, or at least a human. I think he's from Earth, but he arrives at this planet, and he's there as an envoy from the Ecumen, EKU, which is kind of like a federation of planets, but really loose. It's just a way of them reaching out to say, do you want to join our galactic community? And what's unique about this planet, that it's called by the humans Winter and called by themselves Gethin, is that the humans on that planet do not have the same male-female breakdown that is pretty much most of the other humans in the galaxy have. These humans are sort of androgynous until they enter kemmer, which is like when they become sexually active, which is a monthly thing. And so they're gender neutral until they enter kemmer, and then they sort of become male or female depending or based on who they pair up with. And what's interesting is and they build their whole society around that. So our human, who's a male, he shows up and he's permanently male. His genitals are outside his body all the time. That's perverted, or they're considered, and people like that, which do appear every now and then in their society, they're considered perverts. But it's not like perverts the way we have perverts. It's more like, oh, you're deviating from our sexual norm. That's something we must take care of and deal with. It doesn't have all that taboo associated with it. They do have taboos for other things. So yeah, so Gethin / Winter, Gethin, planet Genner, or Winter, they have a different time scheme. It's always year one, and so all of their dates before are adjusted at New Year's each year. They reallocate all the dates of the past and projections of the future, and it's kind of confusing for this Earthling. Our Earth envoy, his name is Genly I, and he is by himself, though there is a planet in orbit of their sun waiting to be woken up when he establishes contact, and they agree. Either they agree to join the Ecumen, or they say no, and he says, I gotta go. So they're in orbit. He doesn't tell them that. He just says, I'm here, and I came in my little space pod, and I'm here to help. And he's like, we're not like an empire or anything. We're just a collection of people that want to trade with each other and share information as well as goods and stuff like that. But there's politics. There's two main superpowers on this planet, and he lands in one, which is the less advanced one technologically, and maybe even socially, but also they're more friendly in some ways. Anyway, but the king, it's a kingdom, the one that he's on, and the king is a mad king, and is very suspicious of this guy coming from the sky, because on this planet, nothing flies. They don't have birds. So the idea of coming from the sky is pretty alien to them. And he's like, so these people from the sky, and he's like, no, we're not going to attack you. We don't want to take over. We don't want to administrate. We just want to trade. And he's like, you're a threat. You're a threat. So he becomes an outcast and has to cross to the other country. He's got a guy with him. I mean, there had been a guy in the government who was pushing for him, who was also outcast because of the king's paranoia. And they meet up in the other country and do all sorts of stuff and make all sorts of plans. I'm going to be nice and vague. We're going to talk more about the society than the plot. Part of this unadvanced society is on this planet. They everything is very old. They have ivory carved radios, and they have vehicles that don't go faster than 25 miles per hour. Why would you go faster? Why would you need to? That's the argument. They take everything real slow. Kemmer I've equated to a very passive, non-threatening, non-violent Pon farr, if you're a Star Trek fan. The other guy that he doesn't trust, that he should trust, that was rooting for him all along, was Estraven. And Estraven is the guy who endorsed him for the king, and therefore the king didn't hate him and banished him. And he saved Genly's ass a number of times, and without Genly even knowing it. And Genly was really suspicious of it. Towards the end, Estraven is like, I'm the one guy you never trusted. I'm the only guy you should have trusted. And he's like, I'm so sorry. At the end, so I told you the end. By the way, I mentioned earlier that the people who are permanently one gender or the other on this planet are perverts. They're actually sterile. So I don't know what that means, but it's something to think about. He, at one point early on, goes to visit the foretellers. There's a certain number of people who have a certain skill. Maybe they're force-sensitive. The foretellers exhibit the perfect uselessness of knowing the answer to the wrong question, unquote. So they, in their society, seeing the future is this kind of meaningless thing. They're like, well, you have to know what question not to ask. Or it's very, in some ways, sort of a flipped Zen thing. The two countries that are big one, he lands originally in Karhide, and then he has to escape over to Orgorine, or however it's pronounced. I have a note here about chapter 6. At some point I got really confused. I couldn't tell who was talking, because sometimes he'll flip the voice, she, Ursula K. The voice will flip from one of the two different characters, and sometimes it's hard to follow that. Most of the time it is. There's the king has a right-hand man that sort of took over because the king's losing it. His name is Tybe, and he's a real populist. He's going to bring them into the new era of violence and nationalism that they've managed to avoid for thousands of years. Yay, progress. And he says all sorts of divisive things. At one point, Estraven says, here's a quote he said, here, just a simple quote, I think we might make it. Estraven said, with that complete simplicity I had long taken for irony. So that's the guy, again, the mistrust that he had, Genly had for Estraven, was that he would say something really simple, and it was so simple that Genly thought Estraven was being ironic, but he wasn't. He was just saying a simple truth. Oh my! At one point when they're together and they've decided that they do trust each other, Estraven asks Genly about women because these people have only seen each other, which are gender neutral, until Kemmer, and they go back and it's no big deal, and then they see this guy who's man through and through, and so Estraven asks, what's actually, while in Kemmer and being drawn to Genly, because they're isolated in their story, asks about what are the women like, and he's like, I haven't thought about that in 3 years since I've been here, and it freaks him out because of this gender neutral person that, by the way, he was kind of repelled by at first. He found that because he tended to see everyone as men until they started exhibiting the other half. And then when they started exhibiting some female characteristics, he was turned off by that because his maleness was like, it just was a turn off according to whatever expectations he has over the years. And that's all very interesting. One other thing you have to realize, or I had to realize while reading it, was that this is, the book is narrated mostly by Genli and sometimes by Estroven. But Genli's character, he is a human male in his late 20s. And so his observations are blurred, and you have to realize that Ursula LeGuin is writing these positions that this 20-something male from Earth has. So she's putting words into his mouth, and you realize this isn't just like some sort of objective thing. That's that character's perspective, which changes over time, as you would expect. Anyway, I'm not going to say too much more about it, except that it's a great book. And it's all about pushing gender boundaries and stuff. And it was written in the 60s. It's a classic that if you're a science fiction reader, of course you should read it. But even it's one of her best books, and she's one of the great writers of the 20th century. So you should probably check it out. If you can't do, review. When the satellites drop, when the satellites drop, when the satellites drop.